Hello, 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 filter-free America listeners. We are back together once again for another episode of the Filter-Free America podcast. Oh, wow. I am already tingling with anticipation for this episode. I tell you what, you guys, I put out a tweet, I put out a Facebook post also this morning, kind of alerting, the handful of people who follow this podcast about what this episode is going to be about. And I can't even lie to you. I'm a little bit nervous about releasing this. This is not that the story that we're getting ready to talk about is not going to be it's not an unheard story. I mean, it's been out there, although it did not get near the amount of media coverage that it should have. It's not going to be a surprise to some people, but you are going to hear some facts in here that have not been told before, or that have been told in a very, very, very small circle of people who listen to underground media. But you're going to hear some shocking things in this episode. More about that later. Let me go ahead and take care of all the business stuff first. I just had to get that out of there because if there's any change in my voice, it's because I am definitely a little excited about this episode here, because I think it's a very important one. But real fast, let's do our sponsor real fast. We've got a great sponsor who helps make this show happen, and I need you to support us by supporting them. That sponsor is simplewebsite.us. 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 What they do, if you're trying to build a website on Squarespace, and you would like some help doing that, simplewebsite.us is the place to go for that. They have, if you go to the website, you can immediately get your hands on free resources, tips, video courses that you can use to assist you in building your website on Squarespace on your own. And again, those are free resources. Use them at your leisure, whatever. Also, if you want to pay a little bit of money, they offer expert screen share support, so they can kind of walk you through steps of building your Squarespace website, make it a little bit easier for you that way, talk you through some things, answer questions that you can't find the answers to easily. Or you can go, all the way out and just turn it over to them and let the designers who have mastered the Squarespace building process do it for you. They are design professionals. They've built hundreds of different websites via the Squarespace website building site, and they know how every element within it works and can maximize it to its full potential. So just start this by first just going to the website and checking them out and finding out who Simple Website is. Go to simplewebsite.us, simplewebsite.us, simplewebsite.us. Check them out and see what they can do for you if you're trying to build a Squarespace website. All right, boom, that's knocked out. Let's see what else. Again, this week, I think as I mentioned in the last episode, this may be the only episode this week as well. But that being said, that's going to be the last. I hope, knock on this wooden desk I have in front of me here. The last week of only one episode. I think I have enough things booked or coming in booked now that I'll be able to start, building up my ration of, my reserve of pre-recorded episodes. So that way, every week I'll be able to put out the goal is a Tuesday and Thursday episode without interruption from after this week. I hope. But if I fail, please stand by me. I'm going to still try to make sure I get at least one episode up a week. So let that be the guarantee. But the goal is always 2. And that's not always easy because, you got, I've got other things to do as far as work and all that stuff. But also, sometimes you go out to record an episode and some things come up where, guests cast to back out or some things change, or you record the episode. It's not the quality or standard that you wanted. So I'm not just going to throw up any episode just for you guys to listen to, just to say that I threw up an episode. So please know that if an episode goes up, it means I feel it's a quality enough episode to put out there. I don't want to put out garbage. I don't want to waste your guys' time. There's plenty of other podcast listening options for you out there. So I want to make sure when you come here, you're going to get a quality product. So if that means sacrificing one episode, go down to one episode a week, then so be it. I'd much rather give you one good episode a week than one good one and one half-ass one. So that's that. Now let's talk about the episode. Now, the guest in this episode is the same guest from the last episode, and I kind of hinted to that in that last episode, that we had something more important to talk about than what we were talking about in that one, and that was a pretty big, important episode. And so that's what this next one is. It's going to be, independent journalist from right here in the Twin Cities, Sam Richards. He will be the guest in this episode as well. So, but don't let that slow you down from wanting to listen to this one, okay? I know I just heard him last week. I don't want to hear the same person again. No. Trust me, you need to hear this episode. This is a very important episode, especially if you live here in the Twin Cities area, especially if you're a taxpayer, especially if you care about corruption and malfeasance within government. This is definitely a very important episode that you need to listen to, okay? This is the deal. Let me take it back a little bit. Back into November of 2015, there was a nationally, I think in some reports, internationally reported on protest happening at the 4th precinct of the Minneapolis Police Department, located in North Minneapolis. And that protest was basically an occupation of the 4th precinct. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say occupation. Members of BLM and other groups and just concerned citizens basically converged on the 4th precinct and took control of it. They had, doors blocked, human chains within the hallways, entryways of this place, surrounded this place. They had the street, the main public street in front of the precinct blocked off with, man-made barricades. They had, barrel fires, campfires, tents. You're going to have to look online if you're not here from locally and don't know the story. You're going to have to go to Google search Minneapolis 4th Street process, Google image search that, and just see some of the pictures and images that were took during that time. And there you'll probably find some videos and things as well too. But it was a protest on an epic scale of a police station, all over a very questionable shooting that happened, the shooting of Jamar Clark. Full disclosure, Jamar Clark, the officers involved, they've already been cleared of the shooting as the time of this recording, of course. It's probably no surprise to many of the listeners of this show here. Even though, of course, the two officers involved, let's see, what were their names? Mark Riggenberg and Dustin, what was Dustin's last name? Dustin Schwarz, something like that. Those are the two officers involved. I believe Mark Riggenberg, it was the actual shooter. Oh, and surprise, surprise, he was a transfer from another police department, I believe in San Diego, California. And let's see, what was he? Oh, that's right. He actually had some claims filed against him from a citizen there where he, I guess, choked out somebody. So I guess it's no surprise that he transferred to Minneapolis and immediately shot somebody. But that's not what this episode's about. It's not. Sorry. I just had to get that out there. Just kind of paint the picture a little clearer. No, that's not what the episode's about at all. While that's an important story, and there's still lots of unanswered questions about the Jamar Clark shooting, in my eyes at least, and the eyes of many others, this story is kind of an aside to the whole protest and occupation at the 4th precinct. Again, I described kind of the what it looked like on the grounds there, what with the tent city and the barricades and the fires and all that. Again, if you weren't living here, you didn't know that the kind of turmoil that this created within the public view, and as far as the city, and there was a lot of people that were supporting the protesters, a lot of people that were calling out the city for not taking control of the situation. It was it was a mess down there. It really was, and I mean a mess that needed to happen. It was a protest that needed to happen. I wish that protests of this epic scale happened every time a questionable shooting incident within police departments across the country happened. I wish this kind of same reaction did happen. So I'm not saying that I disapprove of the protests in any way, but it was an issue. And it was a political hot potato for the mayor, for the police chief, for all parties involved. It was a mess. Something had to be done. The police department had to take back control of the situation because they were looking weak and defeated. And we'll go into more detail about the optics of that within the episode. But they had to do something, and again, to kind of illustrate a little bit more here, to kind of set up this episode, there was a plan to basically invade this protest with a very militant police-like invasion and tear it down, take back control of the surrounding area of the police station, clear the street, etc. So that kind of brings us to what we're about to talk about. When that plan was put together, a person who was kind of forced into a position of being part of that plan was a city worker by the name of Ditty. Ditty. And he was a supervisor within the sanitation department here in the Twin Cities. And whenever they put together the plan to invade this protest and take over and clean out this protest, city workers were going to be used as kind of the cleanup crew behind the police as this invasion of the encampment happened, and they were supposed to kind of go behind the police and clean up. Again, we'll get into more details of that in the podcast. But again, I need to kind of set all this stuff up for you so you know what you're going to hear when the interview starts. Mr. Ditty had questions about that, concerns about that. He didn't like the idea of having to take men under his control, men that he was supervisors of, into that type of environment. These were untrained men, not prepared to deal with this kind of deal. These were, sanitation workers. They knew how to, do their job. They didn't know how to handle themselves or protect themselves in what could be a violent situation. That was a concern for him. He also understood the facts that on the protest grounds where the protests were happening, it wasn't criminals out there. It was concerned citizens. It was protesters. It was sometimes people out there with their children at times, taking part in this protest, something they felt passionate about, something they cared about. Mr. Ditty didn't want to be part of that potential violence that may be inflicted on them as well. And he had an issue about that and made his voice, kind of heard, that he didn't think that this was the right way to do that. And of course, the police in the city didn't care what he had to say, and we're going to go through with this anyway. So his plan was to basically make a fake email account and send documents illustrating what the plan of action was, and send it to a local media outlet, which was KARE 11 News here in the Twin Cities. And that's what he did. And for some reason, we don't really have an exact or clear reason for yet. A member of the media, a high-ranking member who we'll talk about again in the podcast, once receiving that anonymous email from Mr. Ditty, instead of reporting on it, sent it to the police, to a friend that she had working within the police. And the police used that as a way to uncover who Mr. Ditty was. Even though he was using a fake account, they discovered who he was, and he was exposed as the whistleblower that he was. And again, more details will come out in the episode here, but long story short, he got, basically where they were going to terminate him, get rid of him, and he got into a very dark place, and he fought it for months and months and months, and sadly it ended in his suicide. So that's kind of the background of the story right there. And I gave you a lot of information about it, but there's a lot more coming, including some recorded conversations between family members of Mr. Ditty, the staff member of Care 11 who actually forwarded the email to the police department. And, of course, the also a little snippet at the very end of the show that's going to really kind of rock your world. It's a clip from Mr. Ditty's lawyer, which was a union-provided lawyer. And what she says about this whole thing should really wake a lot of people up when you think about how ethical and honest at least Twin Cities city government is. So, yeah, you need to listen to this. You need to consider, this, on a, relative to, city governments, wherever you're at and how things operate and how things go. And especially if you're here in the Twin Cities, and consider, all the things that we've seen, all the issues we've seen in the last few years, especially with law enforcement, with the city, and start asking yourself, is the city really being ran the way it should be ran? What are the motivations for some of the things that they do? You should also question, the quality of journalism, especially from an outlet like Care 11. After you listen to this episode, I'm tensing in my jaw right now because there's so much within this episode that hits so many of the hot button issues that I've been known to rant and rave about. And this right here it's just all in one, and it's disgusting and it's gross and it's going to anger you. But it's definitely important. You definitely need to hear it. I hope the mayor at the time, no longer mayor here, Betsy Hodges, I hope she listens to this episode. I hope as many members of the Minneapolis Police Department as possible hear this episode. I hope every person working for Care 11 hears this episode, as well as every other news outlet in this Twin Cities area. I hope you all listen to this and understand, that all involved have really dropped the ball. Some people, I believe, did it intentionally. I think they did it for political reasons. I think that some people did it, just because that's status quo, and somebody had to fall on the store, and somebody had to suffer, and messages had to be sent. Pick your reasons. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you, the listener, to interpret it as it is. But it's a very important episode. Again, the guest is Sam Richards. He's an independent journalist. He is basically the guy who put together North Star Post. nstarpost.com is the website. North Star Post is what it's called. It is basically an online publication where he does, where you can find all his work as an independent journalism, be it podcasts, stories, or whatever. He and the other journalists that he works with, I believe all have stuff there. So it's called North Star Post. The website is starpost.com, nstarpost.com. And of course, if you want to follow him on Twitter, that's at Minneapolis Sam, at the city Minneapolis Sam. So yeah, that's the episode here. So please listen intently, and this is, if you only share one episode of this podcast ever, and share it with your friends, share it in your social media streams, I would think, at least to today's date and to today's episode, this is the one I'd want you to share. It's a very important one. So prepare yourselves. We're going to listen to this episode right now. Here we go. So I guess first, just tell me, how did Al Ditty first get on your radar?
So I got to give a lot of credit to City Pages. I think it was Corey Zerkowski, if I'm saying that right. He, I believe the IWW put out a thing online that he caught. And
can you tell who, for people who don't know who IWW is?
Yeah, that's an anarchist labor union, which does a lot of protest organizing. And I'm pretty sure the timeline is that they put the story online first about how Al Ditty, working class hero, I believe was the title. And he picked up on that with the City Pages, met up with Sheila and Dorleen, who is Al's sister and mom, and basically covered that they felt that the city vindictively kind of attacked Al for blowing the whistle on this raid that was coming up at the 4th Precinct. And that's how I caught it initially a couple years ago.
How much detail did they really get into? How much of a story? And I don't want you to cast judgment on City Pages and the work that they did. I mean, was it a thorough enough job in your opinion?
No, they're pretty limited. I mean, they don't have a lot of space. They're not supposed to be like an investigative publication, but it was enough to put it out there so that I found, or saw the missing pieces of information and knew that Sheila and Dorleen would be interested in finding these answers. So it motivated me to get in touch with them, I should say.
Okay. And what before you, because I want to know about that, contacting them, but what, and I kind of remember when this all kind of came out, but just bits and pieces. But do you remember what the general public reaction was when this story came out? Did it cause any ripples? Was there any
it didn't
man
seem
on
like
the street reaction to, that this was something that should be an issue?
I think amongst people that were involved in the protest movement and people that were really keyed into these things, they were obviously upset, but I don't remember seeing any media coverage. Especially, I don't think the TV networks really covered it. But no, I don't think there was much of a public reaction at all, to be honest.
How about a reaction from either city officials or Minneapolis Police Department about the story itself? Was there any outrage from their end about like, why are you even talking about it? This should be fine. This is fine. Always city employees kill themselves when they do things wrong. I
haven't seen anything, and that's something too. We should talk about later, I suppose. But at his funeral, it was really well attended. He was a beloved guy, and the only people that didn't show up or express any kind of condolence or sympathy about the thing was the police. Like, city people went. I don't think the mayor or the chief of police obviously went, but it was a ton of people. They had to shut down parts of the road, and they had a bunch of city trucks and things out at the funeral, but no flowers to the family, no cards or anything from the police or the people that ultimately, caused Al to kill himself, which I think is horrible.
Wow. Okay, so I guess jumping ahead now, your activity in the story, you've been hip to the story now. You're curious. What was your first step? What did you do first thing to kind of get involved and to start learning more about it outside of the City Pages story?
So I basically just started asking around with my friends, and I actually got in contact with Sheila, who's Al's sister again, on Facebook. And it was interesting timing because she said she was getting kind of fed up by the lack of coverage. And she said that she was going to start emailing and calling, TV and radio stations around town to get people's attention. So it was kind of fortuitous timing.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt. This thing's popping in my head.
That's cool.
So to this date, outside of City Pages, what else? As far as major media, either national or locally, what has been said?
NPR, the radio network, had a thing on their blog. I think it was Bob Collins reporting, who does Newscut, if memory serves. But no, it's not been covered by the Star Tribune, Pioneer Press. The TV networks obviously haven't caught it because we'll get into that later. But right. There's some politics there. But no, it's nowhere. I know people at the Star Tribune are interested in reporting on the story. Especially given the new details I uncovered with the data request, but they're busy right now and it hasn't appeared in the paper yet, but I'm fairly certain it will eventually, just as a matter of like getting it in the official record. But that's good, and that might lead to some justice for Al and his family ultimately. But no, to quickly answer your question, it hasn't been covered at all.
Okay. All right. So go ahead with you're contacting her via Facebook, and
yeah, she was happy that I got in contact with her. We talked a bit on the phone, and then she sat down with Dorleen, who's again is Al's mother, and we recorded an interview, which went for over an hour, cut down I think right around an hour. And then a few weeks or months later, after I started getting information from the police records unit, met with them in person to go over kind of the emails that Al had been sending to his attorney, and also some other documents that they collected, right after he killed himself. And that was really enlightening and kind of helped me steer into some other questions.
Are you bringing stuff to them that they didn't know about?
Yeah. They didn't know the name of the person at Care 11 who actually forwarded the email to the police. And there was, I'm kind of scratching my brain right now.
It's okay. Just go through your notes and let's make sure we get as much.
Yeah, and there's still some questions that we're working on too, like who, some of the police were bullying him, like who did that? But the main thing, the biggest, I guess, lead that I found right now was the name of the person at Care 11 who actually was responsible for getting Al in trouble with the police.
Okay, so we'll get to her in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you made contact to her. We know who her. I guess now maybe a good time to maybe play just some of the audio that you did capture when meeting with Sheila.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's important that we play this because this is her talking about her brother Al, and kind of describing who he was as a person, as an employee, and kind of in her own words. So kind of give you as a listener an opportunity to know who this is that we're talking about, and kind of, I guess, paints the picture of who he was as a person. I mean, you can only go so far when listening to a family member describe somebody. I mean, you got to take that for what it's worth. But I think it's pretty clear between this and like the response at the funeral and other evidence about him that this guy was a pretty outstanding, not only employee, but just good human being. So let's go ahead and listen to that now.
When somebody's a good citizen, has never done anything wrong in their life, tries to help the homeless, tries to help the people out in the streets of the city of Minneapolis, gives their clothes off their back to keep them warm, trying to protect families, trying to protect his employees, they're just, the upper people are not there for them. They want to see them fail, and it's a sad part of life. So he should still be here today. I truly believe he was bullied and was not protected by his union rep, Laura, was not protected by the city. Well, I don't want other people to endure what happened to him. I don't, whether it be the family, friends, people suffered because of this, and will suffer the rest of their lives because of this. And I don't want to see it happen to somebody in the future. When they called Alan in and asked him about the allegations, he admitted, yes, I did call Care 11. Yes, he didn't deny it. He told the truth. And he said, I didn't know I was doing anything wrong. I wanted my employees protected. They said, you're lying. That's what he got. You're lying.
Okay, so now we know who Al was, more or less, in the eyes of like his sister. Tell me exactly what he did wrong, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like what led up to it. The audience, I've already explained to them, they know about the protests going on there. They know the conditions on the ground there at the 4th precinct. What triggered Al to send this email, and what was the email about? Paint the picture as much as you can with as much detail as you can.
Sure. So it should be noted too, he set up this email account specifically to email Care 11. For whatever reason, he just picked Care 11. I guess that was his favorite network. And he sets up this email account, and it doesn't have his name or anything. It's pretty vague. And then he gets these emails from the MPD about the raid. Just basically the orders, like you have to go through after the police and the fire departments, who will be fully clad in body armor and heavily armed. So after those two, I guess, legions go through, the police clear the people first. The fire department will then put out the fires and deal with some of the larger items. And then the sanitation people were ordered to go in a violent raid posture. And if anybody's seen, Zuccotti Park in Occupy Wall Street, when that was torn down, it was violent. You have these dump trucks and people ripping tents apart, sometimes with people still inside.
Well, now let's repeat that part again, because I think that's very important, and that's because some people will listen to this and automatically judge Al as a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Of course he's wrong in the wrong. He shouldn't have been, telling, this is police business. He shouldn't have been doing that. But what you said right there is very critical information. The police wanted to use the sanitation department to augment a lack of manpower, to ask people who were hired to do sanitation work, people who I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that most of them weren't trained in proper law enforcement tactics, who weren't equipped to be properly protected in case there was any violence or attacks or retribution for them coming in there. So if you want to disregard the protesters and other cause and throw all that out of the window and not care about them one iota, fine, fair enough. But there's also employees, unprotected city employees who are just there to do a job, who are sanitation workers, whose lives are putting in possible danger here.
Yep. To
help the police do the police job. And that's, again, am I right saying that is part of Al's issue also?
Definitely. Yeah, that was, from talking to his mom especially, that was maybe the top issue, was he was worried about the safety of, firstly, his crew, because he was the general foreman and also the vice president of the union. So he got into this position because he was that detail and safety oriented. And so that was his top obvious concern. But then also there were kids in the tents that he was worried about. It was getting cold, and obviously the fires were keeping people warm. The tents were keeping people sheltered, and, they've been sleeping there. They expected to be, resting. And so to have like a 5 a.m. raid where the police are going to storm in, and then the firefighters are going to be moving around with body armor as well. And then the sanitation workers, it would be, I guess, the third wave without any protection. He was super concerned about how that would be in a public safety sense and how it would be for his men. So he didn't like it at all. So he sets up the email account and thinks that having more cameras around will hold everyone else accountable, which is the exact same reason that the police wear body cameras.
And let me interject here just for a little more color to the situation. And while I can't say with, in absolutes here, this is one of the rare occasions in an interview where I'm conducting where I was actually kind of there, as I mentioned in the intro of this episode. I attended this protest 4 or 5 at least nights. I would go there after work, kind of hang out, be part of the events there at the protest. I took a lot of video and pictures that I had posted on Facebook. But what it appears these police were preparing for was uncalled for. If as far as the type of approach that it feels like they were staging, that Al was trying to divert or prevent them from doing, or at least to prevent them from doing without any kind of proper documentation. There could have been weapons that I didn't see. There could have been a few people with guns. There could have been whatever. Who knows? Because there was, at any given time, there was, I was down there at times where there was many hundreds of people, and I was down there at times where there was maybe 50 people down there. The population of the encampment fluctuated depending on the time of day that you were down there. But and in full disclosure, I was down there at some times where there were members of self-proclaimed Black Bloc, Antifa type groups who were not directly connected to Black Lives Matter, but were there and attending the protest, not invited. The BLM members who I knew and who I spoke to down there definitely were not supporting their actions, but there were some rock throwing, there was some graffiti, there was some vandalism going on, things like that. So I'm not here to say that there was not any. It was completely free of violence and destruction at all. What I'm saying is, it was very minimal relative to the amount of people that were there, especially within the hours that they were talking about. Because late at night, the population decreased because most people just went home. I went home, right? And
it was cold.
It was cold. It was this is November in Minnesota. Yeah. It was cold temperatures. There was not going to be a lot of fight back, regardless, But again, a lot of the people there, and the people who hung out and stuck it out and stayed there all night were the hardcore activists who were not there to commit violence, who were not there to make a joke of this, or not there to commit violence. They were there to protest. They were there
and hold the space
and to have their message heard. That's what they were trying to do. That was what they were trying to achieve. That's okay. So that I want people to know that who are listening to that, that's what these police were going to end up going up against.
Yeah. And those people's children in the tents in a lot of cases too.
And you say what you will about that. I mean, different people raise their kids different ways. And if you feel strongly about something, and if they want to involve their kids in something, especially something that they think may affect their kids in adulthood, I don't see anything wrong with having their kids there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that was cleared and kind of get that whole picture out there. Is the threat of violence for the police officers, definitely not what the police officers were going to prepare themselves for, and we're going to react to based on what we think we know about how they were going to carry out this plan.
Yeah, and it's important this plan, although it's redacted in the emails currently, the family members said they saw these emails, and it was a lot more of a severe, drastic, aggressive plan than the one that ultimately happened, which was, I think, around 2, maybe 3 weeks after the initial plan.
It was at least, the encampment was at least 2 weeks. I think it was a little bit over 2 weeks, so it was rough in that window before they came in.
Yeah. And so,
what detail can you quote any details that you remember that they? Again, this is secondhand information because again, it was redacted.
Yep.
In the report.
I want to potentially try and fight those redactions because I think some of it we might be able to.
And we're talking about the actual plans in this email that he sent, because Al had a copy of that, because of course they were enlisting him or ordering him to be part of this plan, so he had to know how the plan was going to go down. And
they were basically ordering him to be one of their bosses during the raid, because he was supposed to be the point person to order the sanitation people under him around.
Really?
And that was also what he was uncomfortable with too, because he seemed like he was...
and that speaks again to lack of training.
Mm-hmm.
This is a small point in the bigger picture, but he's not trained to direct his employees or his staff or his underlings, whatever you want to refer to them as, under that type of potential.
Mm-hmm.
If they are indeed preparing for what may be a potential violent reaction, he's not prepared for that, trained for that, or employed to do that.
Right. And if he was trained, it would be like a brief PowerPoint, right before it happened.
Right.
So this is about to go down, and this is what we need you to do. Go do it. That's not fair.
Here you go. I need you to carry yourself like you're a military professional.
Stormtroopers.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And so... And he's mostly, that gives you an idea, he's kind of just blowing the whistle because of safety concerns, nothing political.
Right.
But it did have a political outcome in the fact that the raid had to change. The narrative obviously changed because there'd be more cameras there, and the protesters were given extra time to organize and everything else, which is pretty big. But he wasn't doing it for political reasons. It was all safety. And, I think that's pretty honorable. And what happened after that is just kind of despicable.
Right. And again, both safety of people working under him,
mm-hmm.
and he also, had the forethought to think about the people there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't just, he wasn't picking sides here. He was thinking about general safety of both the population and the city employees that he was tasked to, supervise.
But he said, too, that a lot of the people in his department that he was responsible for were members of that, that neighborhood. So they were afraid that people would see their faces and retaliate. And they were also just you can't order your neighbors to fight your neighbors kind of thing.
Right.
So, retaliation is a big threat, obviously.
Yeah.
These people are in those neighborhoods picking up trash, cleaning up the parks, whatever, every single day.
Or the reverse would that be is you're also asking these employees who are neighbors with that thing to maybe do something hurtful to their neighbors. So it works both ways. It's you don't want to be that, the possible retribution, and you don't want to be, some people don't want to do that. Some people, hey, surprise, some people don't want to be assholes.
That's probably why a lot of the police in Minneapolis don't even live within the city limits.
Oh, that's a whole other thing. And that's, it should be community policing. It should,
it is a whole other thing.
We can get off on a whole tangent about that. But what is the percentage of Minneapolis police that live in Minneapolis proper? Less than 10%?
Yeah, I bet it is
something like that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but
as a citizen, I would be willing to pay have tax dollars fund housing for law enforcement officers to live within the cities that they patrol.
It seems basic.
Yeah, because to me that seems like one of the ultimate buffers you can have, because it's so hard for you to go punch, and abuse your authority and attack a citizen when you have to go back home at the end of the day, and that citizen you just beat up and lives right down the street from you. Yeah, that makes you think twice.
And do better policing too. If you know your neighbors,
Exactly.
You don't have to have an intelligence unit to investigate people.
Thank you.
Yeah, but
all right, but that's another topic for another thing. But the whole story is just filled with so many hot button issues that when you really look at it, it's such an important story. But continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, you were asking too. This kind of maybe an early segue, but about stuff we got out during this investigation, and I forgot at the time, but we got the subpoena out that ordered AOL. So a way subpoena works is that I'm a police officer. I order AOL without a judge's oversight to give me records. They compel these companies with call records, emails, whatever. Okay,
you're going to tell me about how the police got the email that he sent to Care 11.
Yeah, or figured out who sent it. Because he set up the email to be anonymous, and he requested anonymity from Care 11.
So Care 11 doesn't know at this point. When they forwarded it to the police, which was literally 2 hours after he mailed it to them, correct?
Something like that, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In the evening time, this was sent.
Yeah, he sends it at 10:24 or like around 10:30 to Care 11 assignment or tip line, and Rita Hathaway sees the email and sends it to her old friend / colleague who now works for the Minneapolis police as a spokesperson, and says something like, "Is this legit?" with his email and everything attached to it.
Okay.
And so within 2 hours...
Let's point out, I just love, cherry picking the little points of egregiousness within there. So this is a news organization.
Yep.
Journalists, quote unquote, journalists, okay? The thing like protecting your source. You ever hear that? That thing where you're like, you're supposed to be able to go to a journalist and talk to them and remain anonymous, and they're not supposed to tell whoever they're reporting on that you told them, and it's like a code within this. Remember that? Remember Deep Throat? Watergate? Remember that whole thing? Yeah, that shit's just gone out of the window over there at good old Care 11. They don't even give a shit. But yeah, you can quote me on that too. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, at least Rita, I don't know, maybe it was a really egregious mistake, but it seems weird when the guy...
Yeah, hiring her? Yeah, totally egregious mistake. But yeah, continue.
It seems weird that the guy that received the email was someone that she just, she used to work with at Care 11. So was she currying favor, like, hey, make sure...
He's a cop now? Is that...
Yeah, so MPD spokesperson.
You go from journalist to cop? Is that...
Yeah, I know. It's awkward.
What a fucking circle jerk fucking... Oh,
well, God. You know the game at that point.
No shit.
Yeah. So then... Within 2 hours, it's on the police.
Going from fucking priest to daycare center provider, it's like you're.
That was a jump.
Yeah, well, fine. I'm just trying to take everybody down in one podcast.
You got to be careful.
Yeah.
Administrative subpoenas. I'm sure they'll issue one for you now.
Oh, I'm sure.
No, but 2 hours after he tips Care 11 about the raid, that email is on the police chief's desk, so to speak. It goes to the intelligence center.
The efficiency that the police department and journalism have when it comes to protecting the police officers.
Yeah, and it's messed up because that wasn't the only time I saw in that email thread that I got.
You can't get a cop to come to your house with a fucking burglar breaking into your window in under 2 hours. But these motherfuckers can process paperwork.
Well, when it's a threat to them, apparently.
Yeah, it's light speed.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a mess. And there was I requested something like 4 or 5 months of these emails between Care 11 and the MPD. And this was obviously the worst example of it. But there's another example of them forwarding somebody's, a tip right to the police without protecting them at all. And I think that's the very least an institutional problem. And, if it was just during that time span, that's bad, but good that they fixed it. They promised an internal investigation, but we've never heard anything about what that led to or if it led to any policy changes. Obviously, Rita Hathaway is still in her position, the same position, basically the number 3 at Care, if you really look at it that way.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So now you know all this. Was your next move to call CARE?
Yeah.
CARE 11?
Yep. Once I got the names and I was reading these emails, that was obviously it. I had to get them on the record. I tried for a long time to get the general manager, John Remesh. I went to every single one of his social media accounts. I emailed him a couple different times, and he basically sends respectfully declined to comment, which, you know, you can do a little more than that when it's this big of a deal, and you did promise an internal investigation. And so then after doing some more digging, I found Rita Hathaway's phone number and email, and I gave her a call.
What was she? How was she listed within this stuff? How did you know that she was the one that received the email from Al, the anonymous email from Al? Did you know that going into this?
No. That was what I uncovered by requesting all these emails from the city of Minneapolis, which they gave, which I was actually surprised, because usually when you request things that are like, you put out a request that I think of as like a smoking gun, like, give me all your secrets. They're never going to give it to you. And I was, you know, it took a long time to get these out.
That was my next question, was how long was the turnaround between a request and receiving them?
It was kind of quick, to be honest. You know, it took persistence, obviously. It had a lot of calls to follow up with people, a lot of in-person visits, you know, that kind of thing. But they gave me the emails, which was cool. I mean, the records unit, they're great. They do a lot of work and they're understaffed. And I was just surprised that they actually released it. And one interesting redaction that they didn't make was, so the email that Al sent to CARE 11, the subject line I knew from talking to his family was Black Lives Matter tip. And that was redacted once in the emails that they gave to me, but the second time that I ran across that email in the thread, the subject line was not redacted. So I could see that his email was there. The subject line was exactly what the family said, which made me believe even more what they saw in the email when they saw it. And also then 3 pages of redacted plans or whatever.
Question kind of off subject, but still related. And maybe it's different based on each individual document or whatever. But who does the redacting? Is that redacting done after as you request it? They're like, okay, let's get in these documents now. Let's look through them real fast before we give them to him, then redact them. And then they decide what needs to be redacted at that time. I'm
not exactly sure who like the point person is. It's got to be somebody within the police. Like, I have to believe it's actual police, not records unit people. Maybe I'm wrong, and there's, you know, somebody out there knows, not me. But they look it over quick, and that's part of why it takes a while sometimes.
Like, I'm wondering if it's like some kind of like
a keyword search type of thing? Or?
Well, I was thinking maybe like a legal department, like a room full of lawyers that are there to, you know, prevent lawsuits from happening.
I think that's
like
probably...
how much of this stuff can we not give them and still meet whatever standard of, you know, freedom of information and all that?
There's, on the emails, you can see a lot of them are, it's called like a 13.82 redaction. And so if you've seen FOIA requests, it's similar to that. I think the FOIA, like FBI FOIAs, there's more letters and numbers. But with like these requests from the police and local stuff, they referenced the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act. And so you see a lot of 13.82. There's some in here that I don't think are actual legal justifications. I can't see it right now because I'm looking at my notebook, not Document Cloud. But I think a couple times it popped up with a 13.85 redaction, which isn't actually anything that they can use to justify redacting, which obviously needs to be pursued. But yeah, they do have some kind of legal team / police personnel doing the redactions. I just don't know who exactly it is. Okay. That's an interesting question, though.
I wonder how that process works. And what
I would love to see it sometime.
Like with higher up government stuff, it kind of makes sense. Well, of course, if it's top secret, that's going to be redacted, or that's going to be redacted. But something like this is like, how do they make these judgment calls, and when are these judgments? Who's making these decisions? And
this was 984 pages too in a PDF overall. So that's a lot of work if you really think about it.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting. That's why they make mess ups that are kind of helpful sometimes, like the subject line thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of interesting angles in this, huh?
Right. So then you get her name. you know, at that point you knew that she was the one that received the email.
She I think so. What happened is he sent it to the tip line, and then she saw it.
Or she got it. Okay.
Yeah, and it's probably sent to multiple people. Like you get the corporate email accounts. A lot of people get forwarded when certain emails are.
But
hit.
she's the number 3 person you're saying in kind of the food chain there.
Yeah, that's the way I was explained to me from someone at another news network that knows her personally. Is that you have like the news director, and then
would she and maybe you're guessing or maybe you know, would she be like the person who reviews all the tips, or would there be a reason that maybe this one would be special attention to you, like, hey, we better give this to Rita because Rita's in charge of, you know, cupping the police's nuts, so we gotta give her this one.
Or maybe it's just that she, that's what she was interested in doing, so she saw it and acted on it. Okay. And it wasn't like an official thing that happened necessarily. Because I could see a lot of people, especially with sensitive stuff like that, maybe thinking of it as like a good thing to have as a career move. Right. You see something and you hope that your coworkers don't notice it. You send it to your old buddy, and maybe next time when something big is going on,
back scratching. So
yeah,
for future back scratching for yourself.
Yep. And I think her role there was kind of like the title's managing editor. So she's below the news director, and I think at that time she was probably like whatever you would maybe call it, like a shift lead type of thing, where you're the head honcho at the time.
Right.
And then there's other people that fill in at different times, I guess, but that maybe we're getting too in the weeds.
Okay.
I don't know. But she's the number 3, so I guess you could say,
right.
I think. And she's still in the same role.
Okay. So is this a good time to listen to that audio then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So what are we going to set this audio up then? This is the phone call that you called her. This is the first contact you've ever had with Rita?
Yes. Yeah. And so again, I think if, she didn't do what she did, I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that Al would still be alive today. Obviously, that's me going out on a limb, but it seems like she was really critical to this whole thing.
That's a bold statement, but one I can't argue with. I agree with completely.
And just the way she's dismissive of the whole thing is very frustrating, I think, especially to the family.
All right, so let's listen to this. This is Sam calling Rita. She doesn't expect you to call, which is always good. And you just start asking her questions, right? About this event. All right.
Or try to.
Yeah. All right. Let's listen to that right here.
Care 11.
Hi. I was actually looking to speak with Rita Hathaway, if she's available.
This is Rita.
Oh, hi, Rita. My name is Sam. I'm actually a radio reporter with KRSM in Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
Is it a good time for maybe just a little bit of a chat?
Sure.
All right. So I'm not sure if you're aware. I actually tried to get in contact with John Remesh about the story I'm working on. But it's in regards to Al Ditty, who was a whistleblower with the city.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not authorized to speak for the station. No one is. I'm sorry. We have sort of this thing, no matter what the story is or whatever, it's John is our spokesperson or perhaps our news director, but the reporters, assignment editors, I'm managing editor. We don't speak for the station, so I'm sorry I can't help you.
Well, I wasn't looking for an official statement from CARE. I was mostly interested in talking with you because it sounds like you were key to what I was looking into. You guys received an email tip from him.
I'm sorry, I can't get into it. Do you want me to transfer you to John?
Sure. Is he around today?
I don't know. I work in the newsroom and John's upstairs, so I see John from time to time, but I don't know if he's in or not. So I'll transfer you up there.
Is there an email I can send you questions to directly?
I don't know. I don't know that I'd be able to answer them anyway, so I'll just transfer you to John. Sorry.
Okay.
If John gives the go-ahead, then sure, and he can give you my email address.
All right. Well, I think it's pretty clear that she's full of shit because the minute you said what it is you were calling about and asking about, you could hear tenseness building in her voice. She went from very relaxed and like, who is this jackass calling me, to holy shit, now I've got to put on my fucking straight face and start lying and start bullshitting again. What else can you add to that? You're kind of you're after the conversation. What are you What did you get from that?
Well, the whole time, okay, immediately, like, this is very, very frustrating. This has been the most, like, emotionally, I guess, I don't want to say draining. It makes it sound like I'm sacrificing something to do this, but it's been the most emotionally intensive journalistic thing I've ever done. And this lady is key to it. And immediately she's evasive and tries to just pass the buck as if she has no responsibility. Just on a human level, that was very infuriating. But also it made me know that I had to keep pushing with this, because obviously there's a lot of justice that needs to be served in this case, and she's key to it. So it pissed me off.
Not only on a human level, to me, because when I'm listening to it, I'm also thinking she's, and I'm abusing the word, but she's a journalist, and if she didn't feel that she did anything wrong in this process here, right? She should be wanting to talk about this, or wanting to.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Why are you? It was clear that there was, something was being hidden there, and I guess every company wants their employees to not make statements when there could be, some wrongdoing on the company's side, but it's
even
a
that angle.
Different.
If I messed up that bad at my work, or if, let's say I have a workplace or a company and I have an employee that messes up that bad, I would be happy if that employee took some personal responsibility so it didn't make the institution look like crap,
Right.
But she just immediately pitches it to John, which makes me think that she's just trying to hide behind the organization as a defense.
Right. Like this is like the go-to answer. This is what you're told to say.
Mm-hmm.
And now John is the one you've already tried to contact.
Yeah, and he blew me off.
He already blew you off.
Said the only reason he emailed me, I'm pretty sure, is because I put him on blast on Twitter. So this whole thing, I'm approaching it as I'm a fellow reporter trying to get the news out, and you guys are involved in this story, and there's a lot of unanswered questions and there's a lack of accountability here, and you can at least be respectful enough to, say something. You said there'd be an internal investigation. You owe the family that much.
Right.
Put out some kind of comment besides just, we don't comment on these issues,
But eventually they did make a comment.
Yeah.
Or he did.
Right.
But
not much of one.
Well, yeah. So what did it take to get that to happen?
So they wouldn't comment officially for me, but they would, as soon as somebody from the Freedom of the Press Foundation, who's, also attached to the Columbia Journalism Review, was interested in the story. So she got a comment, and, we're working together to try and get the story out on other platforms. So that should be, something people can look for in the future. But I don't have his comment in front of me to her, but it was more extensive than I refused to comment. But that's how they do it. If you're a guy with a local radio station and a blog online, you don't get the attention when you find things, but somebody with a huge institution asking you will get a little bit more respect.
Wow. We're getting kind of close to the end here where we need to kind of wrap up. Can you give me, because I want to mention, you talking to his lawyer, and there's a point in there, there's one more little small clip that we want to play at the very end that's kind of what we're going to close out on. But I want to kind of jump back a little bit about the suicide part of this. What can you tell me about that? Do you know why it got to that point with him? I mean, we understand, you mentioned there was some bullying going on. Can you give me some more details? I mean, there was bullying, not only talk about the bullying within the police, bullying within his own department. Mm-hmm. Kind of paint the picture with as much detail as you've got as far as what he was going through that led up to the suicide. Yeah,
I think to understand that part of the story, you have to understand that Alan, he was committed to this job like 110%. He was the vice president of the union. They wanted him to be the president. All of his friends, from what I hear, were co-workers, and like I said, 110% to the job. That was his life. So leading up to the suicide, he was basically, after he was outed with this administrative subpoena, which is, I think in this case, probably could be shown to be illegal or at least improper, he's put on this suspension, and that drags on for months, and without any answers. You can see in the emails between him and his lawyer that he's obviously in a really dark place. He's saying things like, I need to get back to work. I feel like I'm going crazy. I feel like I'm trapped. I need some answers. Why is this taking so long? Like, what he says, what are the charges? Meaning he thinks he's under some kind of criminal investigation. His lawyer retorts by saying, you're not under criminal investigation. These are civil service violations, which is important. And he's dragged through this months and months long process when I'm pretty sure they already knew who he was. They just wanted to make an example of him. And that phrase, make an example of him, kept coming up with people I talked to. A source within the city said that, his family heard that multiple times, and other people did too. And it was pretty clear from a clip where we'll play later with Laura talking that.
Yeah, that's actually the very last clip we'll play is really going to hammer that point home there.
So he's being, he's literally being made an example of, and this is something that he devoted his whole life to, which is evident by the fact that he didn't have any discipline in his file. He's had literally hundreds of rewards, and everybody at his work loves him.
Way better employee than I've ever been at
Same
any
here.
job I've ever done.
That's why I wish I would have been able to meet him, because I don't think I've ever worked that hard.
I think I have like 300 disciplinary reports from the job. That might be as close as I can get. Wow. So yeah, it was torment. I'm making jokes, but they were tormenting and torturing this man as punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think is leading this? Who's the?
Ooh. That's a good question. The way I kind of think of it, it's like a dark kind of cabal, it seems like.
Right.
So you have angry police brass. You have a mayor who's being under fire from the Department of Justice for the way that this protest is being handled or not handled. And then you also have his lawyer, who doesn't have a small part in this either. But yeah,
and we say lawyer, we need to clarify, it's not his lawyer that he just went out and hired individually.
Right.
It's his union provided lawyer.
Exactly.
Correct?
And he and his family were under the impression that they had to use her services and they couldn't find their own lawyer. They said that multiple times too, which his lawyer says isn't true. And she says she didn't say that, but it was just
convenient ignorance for her then, that they felt that way.
Yeah.
That they, what was I going to ask? It was about the cops were. Oh, I think I was just gonna say is like, and you kind of hit on it. I think there's a lot. Again, this is all speculation. I can opine and just kind of just give my thoughts on this. This is not based on fact at all. I've got to assume that the police, number one, I was down there. I saw the police's physical reactions to what was going on to the police down there, and I saw a lot of disgust and anger and upset. That they were basically neutered as far as their power went, because if I haven't mentioned it before, there were points within this protest where there were people who created human chains together within the entryway of the 4th precinct. You couldn't, how can I say this? You couldn't get any closer to overthrowing and taking control of a police precinct more than they did without weapons and guns.
Right.
Is that fair to say?
Definitely.
They almost, near literally saying this, they held police prisoner within this precinct. I mean, they could come and go as shift change happened, but they had this precinct on lockdown, so to speak, and the police were upset. The police it was clear to me that the police wanted some kind of retribution for that.
Oh, definitely.
They were angry. They were hostile, right?
They felt like they were backed into a corner.
Right, and they were insulted. They demasculated it, whatever. I was down there at times during the daytime sometimes, and they, you know, some of their, you know, their spokespeople would come out and try to, you know, play nice and talk to some of the people out there, but you could see it in the eyes of the rank and file. I mean, they would come out there, they would put on these displays of bravado with their arms crossed and very angry and try to project this, you know, disgust for these, how dare these people even challenge their authority type attitudes. So it was clear that they wanted some revenge. Okay. It was my long drawn out spew here is just, they wanted some revenge. And I think that they wanted that to come in the form of this initial first plan of the takedown of this event.
Yes.
Right. And like you said, it was meant to be a very tactical, a very militant type feel, very aggressive. Who knows, you know, within those redacted pages that we cannot read at this time, that you know, you're working to get, we want to see, that all of us listening right now should be demanding that the city make available and make public to see what the finer points of this plan was, just out of curiosity, because what could it hurt now? It's over with, right? I'm envisioning something that could have led to violence and injury to the people and the protesters there. That was going to be their chance. And since they didn't get that, they didn't get their pound of flesh, Al became that. And so they wanted to do everything they could to run him into the ground, to torture him, to torment him. And like you mentioned with mayor at the time, Betsy Hodges, she was in a rock and a hard place. She had police officers on her ass because they felt that, you know, she wasn't supporting them correctly. They felt that she was, you know, trying to placate to, you know, BLM and vice versa. And it was a big political mess. So everybody needed somebody to kind of to spit on and to kick and everything. And sadly, it feels like Al was the one. And it feels like he caught the brunt of a lot of this stuff. So
I think that's a really apt way to put it. I mean,
yeah, and again, this is all at this point is speculation. I think, you know, getting those redacted pages of those emails would definitely clarify a lot of stuff of what could have been and what would have been.
Well, you're not wrong though. I mean, they over and over make an example kept coming up.
Yeah, and again, that's gonna, you know, we'll hammer that point home in the last clip too. But and that right there, I mean, the and again, this is idealistic for me to say, but it is what it should be. It shouldn't be about making points when you're running government. It's not about, you know, making points or setting examples or things like that. It's maintaining a city under the law. Okay. And the law doesn't make room for, you know, egos and making examples of things. It's what you can do with under the law.
I thought that's why we had a constitution and law and order society.
Weird, right? Now, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I want you to circle back to something that's an element of this, but you need to speak on it with a little bit more detail, because it's a very important element that's bigger than, I wouldn't say bigger than this, because, you know, out of respect to Val here, but it's a very important point. Go back to what you were saying about the administrative subpoenas.
Yes, thank you.
Tell them what the administrative subpoena was in this case right here, and then explain the difference between what an administrative subpoena is versus a regular subpoena.
Oh, sure. So subpoena basically is just like a court order. People know what warrants are, I hope.
Yeah. Oh, boy, do I. Sure do.
So basically, if in a normal case under a criminal investigation, I'm a law enforcement officer, I think probable cause to, you know, I have enough evidence that I need to get more information from a cell phone company. I give this evidence to a judge. He signs off on it, and then we use that subpoena or the warrant to compel that company to give us information. In this case, administrative subpoenas, which are used all over the U.S. and come back to George Bush and 9/11 mostly.
Always comes back to 9/11.
It sure does. Administrative subpoena cuts out the judge. So they're used a lot locally here, which I hope will be another episode. But this one was ordering AOL straight from the Minneapolis Police Department to give the identity of whoever this emailer was. The emailer that, again, KARE 11 could have just taken the information provided to them and asked the police if this was going to happen and what do they think about that. But instead they forwarded his email with the actual email address attached. So then the MPD issues this administrative subpoena to AOL, and they comply, because at the bottom of it, it says that Al was under investigation for obstruction of the legal process.
Okay. Let me go over that again, because I can't think that this point is not hammered enough. A warrant, a legal warrant or subpoena, you provide evidence to a judge. A judge reviews that evidence and then determines if there is enough evidence available to issue that warrant, subpoena, whatever. Okay? What happened here was the police officers got the email with the email address, and they're like, I want to know who that is.
Yep. Do we have a leaker? What's going on?
Yeah, we need to find out who that is. You know what? I don't really want to talk to a judge about finding this out, because we don't really have any evidence to, support that a crime was committed here.
Exactly.
Right? Because we don't know. It could have been anybody.
Well, and there wasn't.
There's no evidence here. Yeah, it's not a crime. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write on this piece of paper that's called a subpoena, even though it's not, and just send it there, and they're going to give it to me now, because I can legally do that. So essentially what they did was, it's just like calling and saying, hey, I'm a cop, give it to me.
Yep.
That's what it is.
It's a form letter that they fill out.
Yeah.
They literally just had to sign the bottom and give an explanation in the target email.
And it's not, it's just their explanation is their opinion, their point of view, whatever. There's no judge or higher legal authority reviewing that as far as if it falls under the, legalities, it's just, they want that information. Now, why this is so important here and beyond the scope of just this story is apply that to anything and everything else in your life.
Yeah.
Okay. This is somebody saying, hey, I want to go into your house and I want to look around. No, I don't have any evidence that proves there's a reason I need to go in there. but I've got this piece of paper that says I can now, because I just signed it and now I can. All right. This is the changing. This is the what's the analogy? The frogs in the boiling water.
Definitely.
And the water slowly getting more hotter, and the frogs don't really notice it because the temperature is rising slowly. This is what it is right here. This is a perfect example of it right here. And it's scary to me, and it's scary to me that not only that they have this power to do this, which they don't have the power to do this. They're just doing it. They're taking this power. And it's scary to me that so few people give a fuck. Yeah. Right? Because I guess you're not going to give a fuck until it happens to you, until somebody's like, hey, yeah, we've made up this fictional warrant, just based on our desire to come and look around in your place. So here we are now.
That's why we have the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah.
This is exactly why we have it,
I guess.
Yeah, or why we should, or on paper do. Because the king's men back in the colonial days, not to go down too far in the weeds, but they had general writs of warrant, so they could just go anywhere, say that they were looking for contraband or smugglers or whatever, and they just had standing warrants. But the colonists got mad about that, and they said anytime we issue warrants, it's going to be specific and targeted and have to be overseen by a judge.
Right.
So that undercuts the whole thing.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
And it's double down in this case here, when the people who are creating this fictional non-judge approved warrant are the people kind of in the middle of this whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing, it's like if you were a murderer, right? And you wanted to go to wherever you committed a crime and get into a place and cover up some evidence that you did this murder.
Right.
So you just write yourself a pass to get into your murder scene and cover your shit up. That's, I'm being, outlandish about it, but that's what true. It is.
Yeah. Using their power to protect their power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're fake made up bullshit fucking power. That's not even constitutionally approved of power. It's just fucking 9/11 approved power, apparently. I'm sorry. Is there anything else that that you want to fill in there before we throw it to this last clip and exit out of this?
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe in later episodes too, we could dive into things like the lawyering or non-lawyering that was done, but...
Oh, I also wanted... I don't think I ever got the answer about the suicide part too, but go ahead. What was you saying?
Oh, well, we could go back to that too. I mean,
finish what you're saying, then I'll have you answer that.
So there's some questionable things about what his attorney did. He was, obviously urging her to move faster, which you can't always do when you're going through legal proceedings. And this was an arbitration, so that I think is even slower sometimes. But she she told me on the phone that she filed this thing before he committed suicide.
This is the grievance letter you're talking about.
Yeah, the third part of the grievance. And I asked her when it was signed, and she told me that it was right before he committed suicide.
Did you say what the grievance letter was?
Basically, the quote that I'm pulling from here is in Laura's writing, and it says, once we go into mediation, the entire file will be secret. I mean, that's huge, but overall the grievance was basically just to try and fight for him to get his job back.
Okay.
And appeal the determination that was had and everything else. And the predetermination of this matched the determination, which is key to the story too. But sorry, I'm getting all over the place here. So in part of this deal that they worked out, it would effectively seal his personnel file. And so that wasn't done. That wasn't submitted until after he killed himself.
And what's important about why it's important that it's sealed now, because it's sealed to this day right now.
Correct. And the family wants some of those documents.
And it's important to know that no one, not any family member, not any survivor, can legally get into it right now.
As far as it was explained to me a couple different times, yeah. Okay. It's protected non-public data, so there's no way for any of us to touch it. No journalists, I guess not even his family.
Because of this grievance, that's an automatic thing that happens.
From what I understand,
because once that grievance is filed, technically he's still an employee now.
Exactly.
Even after death, there's never been a
on the books, I guess.
On the books.
Yeah.
So that allows them to keep these personnel records private and sealed, because on the books he's never been fired now. And what's important about that is, now no one can look into those personnel records and see as to how much detail and how much true effort was really put into investigating what had happened, or how much of this was just a bunch of fuck you wasting time and making him sit at home and stew and driving him crazy.
Make an example.
I guess we can comfortably say was a contributing factor, at least,
big time.
to his suicide.
Yeah.
Am I getting all that right?
100%. Yeah, that's big. The predetermination, from what we'll hear in the clip, I think, too, if that's one of the ones I can't even remember. Yeah, it is. Where she talks about how, she's had, decades of experience working with these types of grievances and arbitrations. And the predetermination letter matched the determination letter again. So that leads everyone to believe that there wasn't an investigation. None of the people that he worked with said that any city investigators spoke with them about that.
Say that again?
No, so the investigators were supposed to talk to the people he worked with to see, like, why did he do this? Closest
employees within the area. Okay.
Yeah, who were also his friends, according to Al and his family. At least they thought they were. But none of them apparently talked to any of these investigators. So it doesn't even seem like there was an investigation. Plus, I tried to get those investigative notes from the city clerk, and they wouldn't release them. So I don't think there ever was any investigation, which points the finger at, the top people.
Did you ask them directly? Are there notes?
Yeah, that was a data request. I'll have to look up those notes again to see exactly why they wouldn't release them, but they wouldn't. And so I don't think there was an investigation, which makes it obvious that they were just, using him as a prop, making an example of him. And that's not the right thing to do.
No, not at all. I got one more thing I want to ask you, because I want to kind of, paint the picture of the suicide a little bit, just, to, hammer the point home a little bit more of where this all ended up. And then we're going to throw to that clip. Is there anything else before we do that? Because the clip is going to be where we end this episode.
Yeah, I think we covered most of the important stuff here.
Okay. So before I throw to that clip, and please make sure you stick around for the clip, because when you hear what this Laura, what's her last name?
Sparts.
This was the union supplied lawyer, funded lawyer for Al Ditty. When you hear her response to the question that Sam asked her, it's kind of going to melt your mind a little bit. But before that, will you take me to his last day and just we've already talked about the bullying. We've talked about kind of what got him to, I'm giving up. I'm done. How did he kill himself? So the listeners kind of know what that is. And this man is broken. This man, a lifer at his job. was trying to do the right thing to protect not only his people and the protesters on the ground and doing everything that I'm seeing right now, again, speaking from a biased position, but everything I'm seeing right here feels like he did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the news organization, if you want to call them that, sold him out, mm-hmm. and the city used him as a scapegoat for their failures and their bruised egos. How did he leave the world?
So I guess he was spending a lot of his time in the basement, I guess reading the Bible and some other activities. And so I think he went downstairs early one night after watching the TV or something, and he ended up hanging himself in the closet. And I don't remember who found him exactly, but they knew his feet they saw his feet sticking out from the closet. And that's when they knew that, he killed himself. But yeah, that was a obviously a horrible way to go. And yeah, it's just really tragic that so many people failed him. I mean, and it's also tragic that this story isn't widely reported. This is a major controversy within Minneapolis. Not only did, the media fail, and now the media is currently failing to hold each other accountable by not reporting this story. Rita, again, is still in her position at CARE, but the city obviously failed. The police pushed him into this place. We still don't know the names of the sergeants and the brass in the police that were swearing at him, calling him, and harassing him. Those names, I'm sure they're still in their jobs. I
don't know. I didn't know if we said that specifically. He was getting phone calls from police department employees.
Yeah.
Just because unsolicited phone calls, just, hey, fuck you.
You MF or whatever, you don't have a choice. You have to be part of this raid, all this kind of crap.
Oh, this is when he was, before he sent the email, and
I don't know exactly. I think it had to be after the email was sent. I'll have to check in with the family on that too, but It was multiple people. I think also in person, harassment and bullying. So yeah, not only did the media fail completely, the city obviously is culpable. The police pushed him to it. It's horrible.
Right.
And it's horrible that there isn't any justice for this man and his family to this day. So
right.
I don't know. I commend you for helping get the story out.
Dude, you've done the majority of the heavy lifting here. I'm just, some idiot with a microphone trying to help you get more attention to it. And I hope that, again, we're going to throw this clip, and that's, we're going to be the end of this interview process. But, and I'll probably repeat what I'm getting ready to say in the close, because that's just what I do. But listen to this, especially if you live here in the Twin Cities, and also other city employees. Mm-hmm. I mean, this should terrify you.
Yeah, and it does.
You should be scared that this is the city organization that you work for.
Yeah. That
at any given time you can just be an expendable fucking, piece of garbage for doing the right fucking thing. Everything we're seeing, every drip of evidence that we have right now clearly points to him doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Here,
he's the only person in the story, as far as I can tell, that did the right thing. And
exactly.
Plus, the city employees were fearful. Look at the record within the City Pages article. The digital version is different from the print, because somebody read the print article and they didn't like how they were quoted, and they were afraid to lose their job like Al had. So they changed it for the next version of the digital article, but
wow.
You can still get the print version. I think the family still has a copy. I'll try and get a picture of the changes, because that's obviously relevant. But they were totally terrified. And yeah, I didn't mean to jump in after that.
No. But yeah, please, anything you got. I mean, and again, there's lots of elements within the story of things that are small parts of this that are bigger picture problems. Mm-hmm. But this right here, and I think I was talking with Sam before we started recording, when you talk about, I like to get off into the world of conspiracies and talk about, legitimate, real, possible conspiracies in the world. And people will question, well, how could that even happen? How, somebody's going to talk,
mm-hmm.
Somebody's going to be a leaker. Somebody's going to give up, the truth. Well, this right here is why that stuff doesn't always happen,
mm-hmm.
or how narratives are controlled, or how narratives are manipulated, or how truths are kept quiet. It's often by fear of retribution. And this right here is a perfect example. Yes, it's a small scale, But all you have to do is just expand this out and bigger picture this anywhere else, because something like this can happen at this scale. It's going to happen at a larger scale and a larger scale and a larger scale. And the only thing happens is that there's more bodies at the end of the day. That's it. That's the only difference. Okay? So you just have to intimidate, make examples of people enough to get people to shut the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
And between those people who are scared and the people who are just there collecting check and don't give a fuck, then that's how shit gets away. And that's why, and that's why, criminal and corrupt government organizations and businesses, that's how they get away with shit like that, is silence. Okay. And this right here, this story right here in particular has another layer to it, because it also has the aid and the assistance and corruption and failures of journalism, which is supposed to be that one fucking element that is supposed to be there helping us, the citizens of this country, by reporting on crimes and corruption, right? By protecting sources, protecting them, not exposing them, right? So they can report on stories. So people are willing to come forward and report on wrongdoing and crimes, and whether it be pollution or it be theft or what have you. We want people to be whistleblowers, right? We want that.
Yeah.
This is not how you create that fucking bullshit fucking government thing after 9/11. If you see something, say something. Just don't say it to fucking Rita Hathaway, because that dumb bitch will fucking expose you and your life will be forever ruined, and maybe your only option is just to hang yourself. I'm making a joke here, and I'm maybe oversimplifying some things, but I think everybody is getting to what I'm saying, and God, this hits me on such an emotional level. This is what this angers me so much. I'm sorry that so many of our episodes end with me getting all frustrated and fucking sweat beating on my fucking forehead.
Well, no, that's I mean, the point of journalism, I think, at least good journalism, isn't to entertain and, make you feel happy necessarily. It's to get critical, important information.
What are you talking about? I can turn on Care 11 first thing in the morning and I can find the 10 best flavored fucking cookie recipes, right? important fucking news, right? What was your favorite ride at the fair, fucking Rita? Well, we're going to 10-minute segment on that. Where's your story on Al Ditty? Oh, we don't got time for that. We got to talk about the fair. Oh, the Vikings are playing. We got to talk about that. Vikings are important. T-Wolves.
Yeah, and
fucking the Twins suck.
They're like every, I think, news organization, obviously there are good reporters, like investigative reporters, especially at Care 11, but how is this permitted to go on for so long? I don't understand.
Are they good? I think if they were good, they would go work for North Star Post. I think that's what they would do. They would say, you know what, Sam?
Maybe one day.
Fuck these people. I know it's going to take a while. We need to build up our cash reserves. But we need to do some real journalism, because clearly we're not doing it over here. We're over here fucking cupping the cops, police, balls. Anything else before we throw this clip? If not, I need to have a smoke break.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you for coming in.
Of course.
And telling this story, and I'm going to do my part to scatter this episode anywhere I can post it. And get as much exposure to it as possible. Well,
I know that the Ditty family obviously is super happy that you're covering it, because they've been extremely frustrated that this has been so quiet. I mean, besides basically you, me, and the city pages way back, this is it as far as coverage of this story. So, yeah, I mean, I got to say thank you to you too. So
well, thank you, and thank you for City Pages for doing that as well too. And yeah, and Ditty family, I'm sorry. This is horrible. I hope that something comes of this. I hope more truth of this comes out, and I hope more people care. And you listeners, and again, this is probably something I'll say again in the close. If I repeat myself, I apologize in advance. Please, not just for me and for this podcast, but please, if you only share one episode of this podcast, at least to date, share this one as much as you can. Okay. It's a maybe in the larger scale of things in life in the world, this may be a small story, but it's one family forever affected and altered for one man doing the right thing. And I think we should all be upset about that, and we should all at least take 2 minutes to share something to help expose it and help get some justice in there. So what's ending out with this clip, this is a small clip, a short clip, just from part of your conversation with, again, the union-appointed lawyer, funded lawyer, Laura, say her last name again, I'm sorry?
Sparts.
Laura Sparts. Again, another point of failure in this whole process. And do you remember the question that you asked her? What kind of led to this response?
I was trying to get her perspective on a few different things because, obviously journalistically that's fair to do and she's key to it as well. But I asked her, did you think that there was any kind of political pressure going on here and where did this come from? And she was surprisingly candid. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Prepare yourselves for this, guys. Make sure you're sitting down when you hear this answer. I think it's definitely the icing on the cake to end this episode on. Again, thank you, Sam.
Yeah, thank you.
Part of what the family is alleging is that there was, it's a vindictive kind of case where they even were thinking that somebody within the mayor's office was involved in trying to punish Al. And they didn't feel that they were represented wholly and that they were being, like I said, vindictively attacked for this whole thing. Do you have any kind of insight or comments on that?
Well, I'm sure there was political pressure. I mean, I did my job for 32 years, and I know what a predetermination is like when there's political pressure and when there's not.
Do you personally think that there was pressure from the mayor?
Well, I don't know where it was coming from, but I think so. I mean, there's just some things you sense by the behavior of management.
Sure.
They behave differently.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just think that that's part of the reason that our contract wasn't abided by in terms of real investigation.
Well, there it is. How was that for a closing clip, right? That's I don't know how many people would expect to hear that. I know that's not all that surprising to me, but yeah, at least in my view and in that lawyer's view, it would appear that the city government, Mayor Hodgins, Betsy Hodges' office, the Minneapolis Police Department, wanted to use Al Ditty as a message to other members or other employees of city government or anybody who dare question their actions or their activities in the city. And I think that message is, will ruin your life. We'll take everything that you worked for, no matter how committed you were to this city, no matter how many positive citations, awards you've earned as an employee, no matter how dedicated you have been, no matter how much family you have depending on you, no matter how good of a person you've been, and no matter what the reason, no matter how good your motives were, if you go against the city, we'll destroy you. We'll take you down. We'll ruin your life. We'll chew you up and we'll spit you out. Don't go against the city. Don't go against the Minneapolis Police Department. We are the power, and we will use it against you if you dare challenge us. To me, that is the message. That is the message that they were sending. They used Al, they used Mr. Ditty as a message. Now they have somebody to point to. If any city employee dares ever do the right moral and ethical thing, again, you don't want to be like Al, do you? You remember what happened to Al, right? You remember Al, he reported that. They ruined his life. Killed himself. That to me is terrifying. That to me is tyranny. That to me is a next. I think I would second that only to dragging citizens out in the street and shooting them themselves. Life is hard enough as it is, and when you punish people, not only punish but attack, and destroy the lives of good people doing good things, doing what they feel is right. It's disgusting. It is. This city should be embarrassed. Minneapolis Police Department has a long list of things to be embarrassed about. Just another one on the pile. But we, as citizens of this area, people who are taxpayers of this area, this should be an embarrassment. That they're essentially getting away with this. The minimal amount of media coverage. It's slowly fading away. I hope this podcast does something to stop that. I hope this podcast does something to maybe trigger the local media, who have definitely more credibility than I do, and more credibility than even Sam does. I hope that you pick the story back up and talk about this, if for no other reason than to at least give Mr. Ditty the honor that he deserves, I believe that he earned. We always talk about, we want, better government. We want to be able to trust our government. We want to be able to trust, whatever. But this is a small example of why we can't right here. And I say small only because of the scale relative to the nation and the larger, areas of federal government. But this is just like a snapshot of what happens, right? And if you think this is a one-off story, if you don't think that this has happened in other cities across the country in other ways and different levels of government, I think you're completely naive. I don't know. Sorry, I don't have any jokes to end this episode on. I don't know. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you to our sponsors, Simple Website, simplewebsite.us, simplewebsite.us. Hopefully I'll try to come with a more fun episode next time, guys. But again, this is an important one and I have to get out there. Please help me by sharing this episode, contacting Sam if you need to, and get more information from him. Help support his work. Message Minneapolis Police Department, message the mayor's office, draw attention to this story. Don't let Al die for nothing. See you next time.